Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to float into the amazing world of Balloonia, a place where balloons supposedly live forever. But this story isn't just charming, it's also a fantastic way to sharpen our English skills. We're going to break down 5 key sentences from the story to unlock some really cool language lessons. So, this is how Matthew, the believer in our story, describes Balloonia. Right from the get-go, it sets this perfectly magical tone. See, it's not a place you can find on a map, right? It's a place you have to get to with your imagination. This one little line just pulls us right into a world of wonder. All right, here's our game plan. We'll start by setting the scene in Balloonia, and then we're going to dive into 5 key sentences, one by one. We'll look at vocabulary, the story context, and, the grammar that really makes them pop. Okay, let's paint the picture. This story is all about 2 siblings. You've got Matthew, who is a true believer in this magical land for balloons. And then there's his sister, Jessica, and, well, she's a total skeptic. She thinks the whole thing is just silly nonsense. And this is the heart of the conflict right at the start. Matthew is completely serious that his balloon is off to Balloonia, but Jessica just laughs at him. This clash, this difference between belief and disbelief, is what kicks off their wild, unexpected journey. So this brings us to our very first key sentence. Matthew isn't just trying to get his sister to believe him. Nope. He's giving her a really serious and honestly a very creative warning. I mean, just look at that phrasing. He doesn't just say the balloon will deflate. He makes it sound almost human. It will lose its hair. And then he uses this incredible verb to describe what happens to it. Let's take a closer look at that word. The word is shrivel. So what does it mean? Well, it means to wrinkle up, to get smaller and smaller, kind of like a grape turning into a raisin. It creates such a powerful image in your head, doesn't it? You can almost see the balloon shrinking into this sad, wrinkled little thing. What Matthew's doing here is trying to win the argument by painting this really vivid, kind of scary picture. And that leads us to our first big language takeaway. Using strong, descriptive verbs like shrivel just makes your words come alive. It's way more persuasive. Now, does Jessica listen? Of course not. But then, something really, really strange starts to happen to her. All her skepticism is about to get a major reality check. And this is what she says as she herself starts to change. I mean, her arms and legs are literally turning into balloons, and she's beginning to float. This sentence just perfectly captures her confusion and this totally surreal feeling. The key word to zoom in on here is airy. It's the perfect description for that feeling of being weightless, like you're delicate and made of nothing but air. It connects so well to what she's becoming. The lesson here is all about emphasis. See how the word so is repeated before each adjective? So light, so airy, so strange. It's a simple trick, but it really hammers home just how intense and overwhelming this transformation is for her. So Jessica floats all the way up past the clouds and discovers Balloonia is real. It actually exists. But, and this is a big but, this magical new world has some very strict rules. As night starts to fall, the balloon people of Balloonia give Jessica this very direct command. This is not a suggestion, you guys. It's an ultimatum, and it comes with a pretty terrifying consequence. Lose your air is everything. For a balloon, losing air means you stop being a balloon. So in her new life as a balloon girl, this is basically a threat to her very existence. And our language lesson here is hidden in one tiny but super powerful word, must. It's a type of verb called a modal verb, and it signals that something is absolutely necessary. There's no debating it. You must go. It lays down the law in this world. So how does Jessica, our resident skeptic, react to this absolute rule? Well, she doesn't believe it, and instead, she makes a very, very bold and very dangerous decision. Whoa, what a declaration. She just flat out rejects the warning. Instead of being scared, she sees a power vacuum. She's not just staying, she's planning a takeover. This one sentence perfectly shows her defiance and, well, her huge miscalculation. That word, decided, is so important. This isn't just a whim or a passing thought. It's a conscious choice. She looked at her options, leave or stay, and she actively chose her own path. Okay, let's get a little geeky with the grammar. She says, I have decided. That's called the present perfect tense.
What it means is she made the choice a moment ago, but that choice is still very real and active right now. Using this tense makes her statement sound so firm, so final.
Well, you can probably guess what happens next. Her decision backfires, big time. She loses her air, falls out of the sky, and wakes up back in her own bed with a kaplunk. So let's listen in on the very last thing she says to her brother. Matthew asks her where her balloon is, and this is her answer. It's short, it's simple, and it shows a complete 180 in her personality. The skeptic has finally become a believer. And this is our final language tool for today, the rhetorical question. See, where else isn't a real question. Jessica doesn't want an answer. She's making a statement. She's saying that to her, there is no other possible answer. It's obvious. So her whole journey from skeptic to wannabe queen to a fallen balloon girl, it completely changed her. Now she speaks with the exact same certainty her brother had at the beginning. By using a rhetorical question, she makes her new belief sound like a simple, undeniable fact. And that's our look at the language of Balloonia. We've explored some cool verbs, adjectives, and grammar, all through this one magical story. But it kind of leaves us with a bigger question, doesn't it? Jessica only started believing after a terrifying fall. It makes you wonder, what happens when we lose our own belief in just a little bit of magic? Thanks for joining me for this one. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to dive into a wonderfully funny children's story called The Cook and the King. It is just packed with some great and really useful English phrases. We're going to see how a cook, who's basically afraid of his own shadow, somehow manages to land himself a royal job. Right off the bat, this one sentence tells you pretty much everything you need to know about our hero, Wobbly Bob. I'm a bit of a wimp, but I'd love the job. It's such a brilliant and hilarious way to start a story about getting what you want in a very, very unusual way. Okay, so every good story's gotta have a problem, right? And in this one, we've got a king with a serious appetite. We're not talking just a little hungry. This king is ravenous. And even worse, he's apparently impossible to please. And here it is, our first key sentence. There once was a very hungry king who needed a cook like anything. It's simple, it rhymes, and it sets up the whole story. But the real magic here, the part that's so fun to say, is that last bit, like anything. So, what in the world does like anything actually mean? It sounds a little strange, doesn't it? Well, it's not just filler. It's a super common and energetic piece of English slang that just injects a ton of feeling into what you're saying. It really paints a picture. So when this story says the king needed a cook like anything, it means he needed one desperately, urgently. You can almost feel how badly he wants it. It's a really informal but effective way to show that extreme desire. And look, the author uses it again to show the king's frustration. He isn't just frowning a little bit. Oh no, he's frowning like anything, with this huge, intense scowl on his face. This one phrase tells us just how many cooks have already let him down. So with all these other cooks failing, who on earth is brave enough, or maybe crazy enough, to apply for this job? Well, it's not some famous chef. It's a cook named Wobbly Bob. And his introduction is, well, it's one for the history books. I mean, come on, it's just so funny and honest. He leads with his biggest weakness. That's what makes his asking for the job so bold and surprising. What a fantastic way to introduce a character. So yeah, a wimp is someone who's, not brave, a bit timid, maybe even cowardly. Wobbly Bob is basically walking in and saying, "Hi, I'm probably going to be scared of literally everything you ask me to do, but can I be your royal cook?" It's just brilliant. And believe me, he was not kidding about being a wimp. As soon as the king asks for some fish and chips, Wobbly Bob's fear it completely takes over, and he describes it using some really vivid physical language. Think about it for a second. When you're scared, you could just say, "I'm scared." Simple enough. Or you could do what this story does so well and actually describe what that fear feels like inside your body. "My knees are knocking," he says. This is such a great example. He's so scared of the idea of fishing that he uses this classic expression. You can almost picture his knees literally banging together. The author is showing us his terror, not just telling us. It's so much better that way. But then, on top of that great physical description, he also just says it flat out. "I'm terribly scared." By repeating the word scared and throwing in terribly, he's making it crystal clear just how frightened he is. It's simple, but man, it's effective.
And this is where it gets really funny, because this becomes a pattern for every single task the king gives him, from digging up potatoes to chopping them into chips. Wobbly Bob has a brand new physical symptom of his fear. It's fantastic.
All right, so after all of Wobbly Bob's excuses and knocking knees and sweating palms, the hungry king has had enough. He just does all the work himself. And when he finally sits down to eat, he makes this very enthusiastic and very ironic statement. What great cooking. Now, hold on. You see the word what at the beginning, and you might think it's a question, but it's not. The structure here is so important. This is an exclamation, a huge statement of praise. Let's break this down a bit. See how starting a phrase with what or how can turn it from a question into a really strong compliment? What great cooking just means the cooking is absolutely excellent. Then he says, what well-fried fish, which means the fish is fried perfectly. It's a fantastic way to give an enthusiastic compliment in English. So, this brings us to the big punchline of the whole story. If our wimpy cook was too scared to do anything at all, whose great cooking was the king actually praising? You got it. The hilarious twist is that the king, in his hunger and frustration, did every single step himself and totally forgot he did it. He was so focused on getting the meal done that he didn't even realize who was actually doing all the work. And here's the best part. The final punchline. Wobbly Bob, the cook who was too scared to cook, still gets the job. The king is so thrilled with the meal, his own meal, mind you, that he hires Bob on the spot. And that leaves us with one final fun question to think about. Was Wobbly Bob just a wimp? Or was he a secret genius who figured out the absolute perfect way to get a cushy royal job without having to lift a finger? I'll let you decide.